Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started today. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for bearing with us. Obviously, last week the hurricane had an impact on our production release. I hope those that were impacted by the hurricane, hopefully you made it through safe and sound. Hopefully you got your power back and everybody's safe. But we appreciate you guys meeting with us today to go over the first phase, the first production release of the SWEPT application. SWEPT stands for the Statewide Environmental Project Tracker. This is a phase 1 implementation, and we're going to basically be releasing some general navigation for the site itself, tools, reports, how to do things, how to make PDFs, how to look for projects, how to complete a type 1 checklist and go through the approval process. Very simple functionality, because the intent is between now and December 1st, as the state of Florida and DOT in particular moves towards NEPA assignment, there's responsibilities transferring from FHWA to the department, and having a consistent application and interface is going to be a key component to be able to satisfy the requirements that are going to be set forth in the memorandum of understanding between our agencies. So that being said, we've developed this application to kind of bring everything together to support the requirements of that negotiated MOU, to have a consistent interface, a consistent infrastructure, to be able to store and attribute files, to be able to organize things, to be able to respond to audit requests and file requests, as well as perform our own self-assessments and do performance monitoring. We didn't want to wait until December to just roll out an entire application, so we're rolling it out in small phases to get everybody accustomed to working within the interface, getting used to seeing projects, going through the approval process, looking at alerts, being able to create reports, so that by the time we roll officially out in December, when that MOU is executed, we've got a pretty firm grasp on how we would do things within this particular application. Couple logistic related items. You guys will all get a copy of the PowerPoint. We're also recording this session today. We do notice that we're, recognize we're doing this on a Friday morning. There may be a lot of folks that are out. That's okay. We'll have a complete recording of this entire session. You'll notice that we also tend to develop little short videos, things for how to navigate the site, how to do a type 1 categorical exclusion, how to do an approval of a type 1. And as each new function is rolled out within the SWEPT application, there'll be little tiny short videos to kind of demonstrate how you would be able to perform those functions. So you don't have to remember how to do everything, you just have to know how to get help. So we'll make the recording available to you, and we'll also make the PowerPoint that you see on the screen available to you as well. It's just short. But the meat of this is going to be just introducing the application and then giving you guys some short demos. If you're participating with other folks in the room, if you could please use the chat and tell us who's attending from your location, so we have an accurate record of all the folks that were participating today. Additionally, with the chat, we'll be using that to capture your questions. You'll notice when everybody came in, we had everybody muted initially. If you've got questions, feel free to put those in the chat as well. We've got some folks that are monitoring the chat, and if there's questions we need to handle, we'll handle those questions at the appropriate times. We'll have little breaks throughout this particular presentation. I'll also hand over the presentation to Chris Sands. For those of you familiar with the environmental screening tool and the ETDM process, we have a staffed help desk. Chris Sands is one of the folks that have been staffing that help desk for about a decade now, and they'll also be taking on that responsibility for the SWEPT application. And as we move into each of the various demos, it'll be Chris that'll be providing an overview of that piece of functionality that we'll be demoing at that particular time. So just jumping into it, we're going to give you an introduction to SWEPT. We're going to talk a little bit about records management and retention, and then the meat of this is really to get you kind of looking at the application. Like I said, the first couple pieces of functionality that are coming out now are project dashboards. Those familiar with the SWOT dashboard, these are sort of the equivalent dashboards, but they're broken out by various classes of action. So type 2s, EAs, EISs, and the rest of the SEERs. The interface will be very familiar with what you've seen previously. And there's not a lot in there now. There's not a lot populated, but we'll talk about how we would expect that to be populated through the coming months and years. We'll also be looking at the SWEP Type 1 CE checklist. That form has what we call now electrified. So that form itself exists within the SWEP application. We're now in production. You'll be able to go online, create a Type 1. You'll be able to attach supporting documentation. You'll have spots to put in your analysis, and you can have consultant staff preparing these things. You can have internal staff preparing them, and then they'll be routed to the appropriate folks. Your district environmental administrator for their review and approval will show you how they get an alert, or they get an email that prompts to say, hey, there's a Type 1 that's been completed. Please go in and approve it. The approval itself is all electronic, and then there's integration with the department's electronic document management system that as the Type 1 is approved, that document itself and all the supporting documentation are then attributed and copied directly into the EDMS and stored appropriately within that particular system. So just sort of an overview for SWEPT itself. SWEPT is, again, the statewide environmental project tracker. It's an extension of the environmental screening tool and infrastructure there. A key point that I want to get out to folks is that it's using the same database backend. So the same username and password that you use within the environmental screening tool is the same username and password that you would use within SWEPT. Therefore, if you change or update your password in one location, it's changing it in both. If you update your contact information, it's changing it in both locations. After this particular training, I'll send out an email to the district environmental administrators and managers of the teams out there with a request to identify all the folks that they would like to have access to the system. Remember, right now the functionality is very limited. It's just going to be general navigation, being able to look at the project dashboards, and then those that are processing Type 1 categorical exclusions or approving Type 1 categorical exclusions. And if you respond back to that particular email, we'll quickly get those accounts set up within the system. Some of the features I just wanted to talk about within SWEP. It's, again, bringing in those project schedules. Those of you on the call should be very familiar with those PSM schedule codes and the various corresponding milestones that they're associated with. These dashboards will track those various activities. There's also an integrated PD&E scope of service development where there's a project setup that allows you to pull information in from work program or from the environmental screening tool and begin to work on the environmental development phase. There's also a component where you can develop an interactive scope of service that serves as a foundation of expectations for what we would expect during the document delivery of an environmental document for review. You can also work within the SWEPT application to assign and complete document reviews and approvals. So for instance, what you'll see demoed today for the Type 1 categorical exclusions, you can have a person that can go in and create that initial record. They can do the initial analysis. They can do all the various uploads, and then they can pass that off for approval to the appropriate district environmental administrator or delegate. To be able to look at those documents and then put their electronic signature on that file as well. The SWEP application, one of the big things that was a key component of building such an interface is being able to respond to FHWA audits and requests for information, being able to access things in a consistent and efficient manner. We are held to certain standards to be able to provide any document they ask for within 5 days. So we've got to be able to get to those documents very quickly and be responsive. Another big component was that we had to be able to demonstrate that we could meet the data file and retention management requests and requirements established by the federal government as well as the department. And so being able to put things into a consistent interface that puts everything in the appropriate document group and type and ties them to the right retention management and retention schedule was an important part of this. I also mentioned the self-assessments and the audits. That's where they're going to be coming in. We don't want them in all of our various systems. We just want them to interact with one system to get those answers rather than spider out into all the various parts of the agency. And then again, the last bullet there, quality and performance management results. Part of the negotiated MOU is you have performance measures and standards. The SWEP application will help us be able to keep up and report on how we're doing against the various negotiated performance measures. At a high level, these are basically the 5 components. We're going to go over the first 3 today. And as we go through the various implementations of each phase, we'll release more and more functionality, and I'll show you a schedule on the next slide. But just to be able to give you sort of an overview, obviously the project dashboards, it's tied to those PSM schedules. It's looking for projects in the environmental phase. It's pulling them in by FM and using the PSM codes to know that this is a type 2 or this is an EA or this is an EIS, and then pulling those projects onto those various dashboards to recognize the various milestones as a project is being delivered. The next one in the middle and the top is the project input and setup. So there's some basic project inputs, how you set things up with either the scope of service or being able to search on an FM number and be able to pull in the basic information out of work program. There's various little tools to be able to allow that. The next box over there, project documents, is tied to being able to dive deep into the project itself, view the project documents as they're associated in there, be able to see all the expectations, so who the contacts are, what the project schedule is, who the OEM review contacts would be, as well as any of the uploaded and attributed documents that are then copied into the EDMS. And you'll see some of that today. The last 2 are things that will be released in later phases. The quality and performance management is really tied to those performance measures and how we're going to report on those. It's tied to supporting self-assessments and FHWA audit requests, and being able to monitor our progress against those various things. The last one on the bottom right is team management. That's one that's really just going to be up here for OEM. It's how staff will be assigned for the various federal classes of action, how folks are going to review things, how they pull in subject matter experts, and how they provide those assurances to management that quality assurance has been completed to appropriate satisfactions to provide that certification to the director, here Ken Moorfield, to be able to ultimately sign off on the document. So that's an interface that allows that kind of resource allocation within the system. Talking about the phased implementation, you guys are here today. We had hoped to get it out last week, but the hurricane had a little bit of an impact. You've got the project dashboards and the type 1 categorical exclusions. When you see the dashboards, you're going to see it's pretty empty, but you'll be able to see what the framework is. And as we begin to work with everybody to begin to populate those PSM codes, on the various projects, those projects will be updated within the dashboards as well. We'll go through the type 1 categorical exclusion. We'll show how you create one, put the supporting documentation, do the analysis, and send it for approval today. Then in a couple months in November, the type 2 checklist will be in there. The scope of service tool will be there. The basic project setup will be completed, as well as the OEM management tools to allow teams to be created and managed as well. In December, right now we're expecting the MOU to be effective at the very beginning of December. So that's where the bulk of the swept application implementation needs to be, because once we go live, we go live. I mean, that's just it. Once we cross over that threshold, we're in a new world, and we've got to be ready for that. So the rest of the functionality you'll see come out in December are tied to the project document management, the reviews and approvals of larger, higher level documents, reevaluations, the environmental certifications. You'll be able to create those whenever you need them. The legal sufficiency to be completed by, formally by our legal staff, and tools to allow the creation of the administrative record. That'll be followed by January, where we're going to be putting in the self-assessment and audit support. We are very close on the MOU, so we've got a pretty solid foundation on the performance measures at this particular point. We've thought through the audit support piece and the self-assessment piece, and now we've just got to work through developing the modules to support that. One thing, just so you guys know, when Ohio executed their MOU last December, they got requested to immediately engage in an audit within just a couple of weeks. So we just have to be able to be prepared to be able to do those self-assessments and support an almost immediate audit request. So that's why it's coming so quickly. As I talked about earlier, the initial SWEPT user community, we're looking at the PD&E project managers, the district environmental administrators, and then anybody that really helps in the preparation of either a type 1 or folks that you just want to become familiar with the interface. If they don't have one of those roles, if they're not a PM, or they're not an environmental administrator, or they're not someone that's assigned a role to be able to create an initial type 1 checklist, they won't be able to do very much. What you can do within the application is specifically tied to who you are as an individual and what rights you have within the system. But you're more than welcome to tell us that these other folks should have access, and they'll have access. They just won't be able to perform any functions. But it would at least give them the ability to kind of see the application interface and interact with it a little bit. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris. Well, actually, let's start right now. Are there any questions I need to answer? I haven't actually been looking at the chat before we go into a demo. Anything related to the overview?
Yes, Pete, there are a few questions. Rebecca Bolin asked, how does the SWEPT interface with PSEE and also with the enterprise, the ERC, enterprise review?
Okay, so a couple of things. I'll focus on Project Suite first. So Project Suite is smart enough that it pulls stuff out of the EDMS. So the connection is you're going to use the SWEPT application for the storage, management, and approval of the various environmental documents. By putting them into SWEPT, you're also putting them into the EDMS, which also means that PSEE is able to draw from and pull from PSEE for all those environmental documents and pull it into their interface. We're working with the Project Suite team. Right now, you guys are still able to put environmental documents in the Project Suite Enterprise Edition today, but you're going to stop that. And the reason you're going to stop that when we officially go live is because at the moment today, when you upload an environmental document in that module, you're not actually putting it in the right document group and type, and you're not tying it to the appropriate retention schedule. It's actually being stored in one group and type within Project Suite that isn't unique or specific to that document or document type. So when we officially go live for that portion of things, we'll work with that team. They'll just stop allowing the upload within that environmental module, and you'll use the SWEPT application, which will populate that environmental module. For interactions with the ERC will still function as it does today with uploading documents, doing the draft internal reviews with the various teams. But once you get to the point where the document is ready begin to work through the approval process, that's when it will be uploaded into SWEPT and pushed all the way through the approval process. Were there any other questions? Okay.
Yeah, the next question was from District 4. They mentioned that a lot more people will need access to SWEPT and EST, such as PMs, other document reviewers, et cetera. Do all these people need to do an ARF request? And are we now going to be granting a whole group of new people access to EST?
Okay, good questions. So initially, I'll send out an email asking you what's the world of everybody you guys want out there. And from there, we'll use that list to create those various accounts. And then once everything settles down and we can go back and start working through the ARF process, we will. We will work through that. Instead, on the back end, what we'll do is we'll do some global justifications, and then we'll work from our end to go back in on the ARF side and complete those approvals to all those various accounts, so you don't have to individually create every single one of those. Okay, so focusing on the second part of the question, which was, if I give them access to SWEPT, does that give them access to the EST? And the answer is no, it does not. Because you can be granted only a SWEPT account and only be given SWEPT roles, and you could try to log on to the EST, but if you didn't have the appropriate role within the environmental screening tool, it wouldn't let you in to do anything. So it doesn't really work both ways, but the reason I wanted to say, that if you have an account in the environmental screening tool and you have an account in SWEPT, it's the same account, is because I just wanted folks to recognize that if there is an account in both of those, they are going to be the same. But just because you have an account in one does not mean you're given an account in the other. The only way you're granted access in either system is that the folks that have the rights to grant the access approve the access. Were there any other questions?
Another question from Rebecca. Are ACE documented into SWEPT?
Our ACE document. So ACE are documented within the environmental screening tool. And so all of the documents that are available in the environmental screening tool are also accessible in SWEPT. So you go into SWEPT and you're gonna say, I'm working on this particular project. You'll be able to search by FM number, or you'll be able to search by ETDM number, or you can kind of start from scratch. Once it recognizes, hey, there's this FM number, it also looks to see if there's a corresponding one in ETDM. If you search on an ETDM number, it'll say, hey, here's an ETDM project we found that you guys are working on. Here's all the details from that. Do you have an FM or multiple FMs you want to tie to this particular project to move forward? And then that provides the connection between the two systems.
And the next question from District 4, can we add a commitment tracking module into SWEPT?
The answer could be yes. I don't know yet. Right now I have you saw that list on here. Let's see. There's a lot on the plate right now. And it wouldn't be on this list right now. Right now what we've been completely focused on is looking at the negotiated MOU. What are the things we need to have in place to be able to meet the performance standards as established in that MOU? So I would tell you that it's not on the list right now. I can't tell you that it won't be on the list. It's just not on the immediate list. Certainly something to discuss.
And Wendy would like to know if ACE projects usually have an ETDM number.
Say that again.
Do ACE usually have an ETDM number?
Yes, ACE would normally have an ETDM number. Absolutely.
And Gwen Pitkin has a question. What did FHWA audit during Ohio's early audit? Yeah, so
it was kind of crazy. So, and they did the same thing with Texas, actually. What they tend to do in the very first audit is they tend to send volumes of questions. I mean, we're talking like hundreds of questions that really kind of dig into the processes in place and how you handle things and what your procedures do and what's your QA, QC, and how do you assure that you're developing quality documents and how do you perform legal sufficiency. They kind of, in that initial audit, because there isn't necessarily a lot of projects that would have completed the approval process and would have qualified for review, they tend to focus on the bigger items. All depending on when they come in and do the audit, there may be things that are completed. If there are things that are completed that would qualify, they'd be looking at that as well.
And another question from Rebecca. If a project is in SWEPT, will the info also show up in PSEE for access of information, or saying the project is in SWEPT? Turnpike uses PSEE for info on all projects.
So that the documents that are in SWEPT show up in PSEE. The details that populate SWEPT, so when you search on an FM number and it pulls in the information out of FM for what that project is, PSEE is doing the same thing. It's doing the same query and pulling the same information in. So we're pulling stuff from the same location.
And that's all the questions in the chat.
Okay. Well, we'll jump back on. We're going to go into a couple demos. It's already 10:30, so I wanted to make sure that we get through some of that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Chris real quick. You're just going to do some general navigation, just get folks familiar with the site, and then it'll jump back to me for a couple minutes, and then we'll finish off with a couple more demos. So, Chris, I'm going to go ahead and make you the presenter and turn it over to you for a minute.
Thank you, Pete. I'm going to demonstrate the general navigation in the SWEPT tool, starting with the login screen. The logo for Office of Environmental Management is a link to the Office of Environmental Management website, so you can click on that link. I also want to draw your attention to the Forgot Your Password link down here. The green color with underline is a link. Whenever you see it in the SWEPT application, it's a link that does something for you. In this case, it lets us choose, input our username or email address and click the reset password to receive an email with an updated temporary password. And the contact us information provides you with information to contact the help desk, the OEM help desk that supports the SWEPT and EST applications. So please feel free to contact us. Before you get frustrated, as soon as you have a question, we're here to help you, and that's our sole purpose. So when you do contact us, you're not interrupting us. We're just doing our job. So I'm going to log in now. And show you how to move around inside the application. I first want to draw your attention to the top bar. You see Home in the upper left corner. This is the home of the breadcrumbs, so Home is just going to take us back to this beginning page. But as we move through the application, you'll see that the listing here grows, and each section of the breadcrumbs is a link back to another part of the application where we can go. We have two icons in the upper right corner. This is a bell icon. Right now it's got a big red 1 over it, letting us know we have a new alert that we need to attend to. And then our Head and Shoulders icon is our account. So I can click on the Head and Shoulders, and this allows me to change the password. I put in my current password, put in a new password, and then confirm that new password and submit it. I can also update my contact information. So here's my name, my address. Very important, your email address and phone number. We're going to send a lot of notifications. We want to make sure those are going to the correct email address. So we'd like you to keep that up to date. In this particular role, I can delegate authority. We can talk about that later. But the logout link is here. So if you're looking for a static logout link, you need to go under the Head and Shoulders and find it there in the logout. The next bar here, the title bar, starts with the hamburger icon. Hamburger icon is related to the menu. It's a toggle, so if I want to hide my menu and give myself more screen space, I click it. If I want to show it so I can navigate somewhere, I click it. On the right, we see a PDF icon and a zip icon. So those right now are disabled. Our mouse pointer turns to the circle slash. When they're enabled, we'll be able to use those for exporting the current screen contents either to a PDF or to a zip file. We also have a search tool here. I can search for information. I'll just put in a search center road. I can either hit return or click on the search magnifying glass. I've got a bunch of options here for filtering my results if there are too many. But notice the results here, 3 categories: projects, documents, and people. There are no people matching to our search term, so we got 0. And again, the green underlined text is links, so those will take us to various places in the application to let us view the document or look at the project detail. I can click on the OEM logo to go back to my home page, and notice these icons. We recognize those from the PowerPoint that Pete was showing: project dashboard, project input setup, and the project documents, the 3 main components of our application. I can click on the My Alerts page, or I can click on the bell to get to My Alerts and see what those are. In the top here, I can search for My Alerts or My Area. Because I'm the district environmental administrator, the account I'm logged in on right now is on this test server. I have this option for My Area that would let me see alerts throughout my entire district. And by default, I'm looking at alerts in the last 60 days, but I can expand that to go further back in time. You see our new alert listed here with the word new. That word new is going to go away once we've seen it. Now that we've seen it, on the next viewing, it won't say new, but it'll still be listed in alerts. And we have some dismissed alerts. So if we want to take action right away, we can click on the action link and take care of that. Or if we want to postpone it for later, we can click on dismiss, and it gets pushed down to this lower table of alerts. When we go back to our main dashboard, I want to point out that each of these 3 icons will take us to what's called the overview in each section. So the overview page for project dashboards, for example, lists here 3 buttons: federal SWOT dashboard. This is 3 different views of the same dashboard. They're essentially filtered by class of action. So you can see type 2 CEs, EAs, or EISs. The state SWOT dashboard is similar to that one, and it's only for SEER class of action. Then the executive dashboards, there's one for SEERs and one for federal classes of action, and those are a limited view of selected projects that are tracked at an executive level. We also have listing of projects here. This is all projects. We can filter to My Projects just by checking the checkbox, and these are limited to District 4 because that's the user I'm logged in on is at District 4. We also have filtering tools here, so we can select by district or search by FM number or project name for any of the projects that we want to try and find. In the project input setup page on the overview, we have a link to the Type 1 CE checklist. So if we have a role that authorizes us to input a Type 1 CE checklist, we can click that button, or we can click the link in the menu. Either one takes us to the same place. We have 3 different lists of projects here. Notice that they're by default filtered to my district. This is projects with incomplete setups, so projects that I would need to take action on and complete. Projects changed in the last 30 days, and then all projects. By default, since they're filtered to just my district, I can change that. I can set it for all districts. And now you'll see there's a full listing of projects. Notice only those that I have authority to edit show the Edit Project action button there. On this page, there's this left side menu for navigation. So as we scroll up and down, you can see that that menu matches to where we are. And if we wanted to jump quickly from one spot to another, we can click on the menu to help us move around. In addition, once we get past 10 results in any of these tables, we see the pagination tools that pop up here, so we can scroll through the results just by clicking on the pagination. The next section is project documents. Again, the link would take us to the overview page, which is here. The page starts with a filter where we can search for particular projects or sets of projects. Again, I can search by project name. The default list of my projects shows just my projects. Oh, sorry. Center Road. Here we go. So we've got some results from our search. The FM number, you'll notice, is in that link color, so we can click on it. Notice also here's a project document with a link, so we can go directly to the project document by clicking on it. So when I click on the FM number, that's going to take me to the project detail page and show me if the project has geometry. The map will zoom to that geometry and show us where it is. If we want to zoom in or out, we can click on the buttons to zoom in or out. And then all the project detail information is listed. This is pulled in from Work Program. The schedule data, any information that's available here, and then any project documents as well. I can navigate, again, either using my breadcrumbs or I can use my back button in the browser. I can also hold my Alt button and use my left arrow key on my keyboard. That'll go back to where I previously was. And we're going to take a look at that document as well. So we can click on the document and open up the PDF. Just a test document in this case. And we can also, when we go to look at the project that has a document in it, we'll see that the documents are listed. Documents are listed here, so there's project documents and we can access those. The report section right now for phase 1 only includes reports related to approved type 1's categorical exclusions. In the results here, we get two options when we click the link. We can either go to the project page, which we just saw, or we can go to the CE report. The CE report lets us see the completed project checklist, and this is what it looks like on the screen. Notice our PDF button and our zip buttons are active, so the PDF button will generate a PDF document that looks like the paper form that you're familiar with. If we choose the zip button, that will include not only that PDF of the checklist, but it also includes any of the documents that are included for supporting documentation or other documents attached to the Type 1 CE. Finally, the Help tab provides you with help, a description of all of the sections of the application. Down here near the bottom, there's the training videos, links to training videos. So the general navigation will show you pretty much what we just covered. And then we're going to talk through some of these other items later on today's presentation. And as always, our contact information for the OEM help desk is listed here. And we can't encourage you enough to contact us when you need help. So Pete, that's the demonstration for that.
Thanks, Chris. Hold on as I switch back over. Okay, data management and retention was just a couple slides I wanted to go through, and then we're going to give a demo of the dashboard and the Type 1 checklist. Obviously, for our records, we're in charge. FDOT maintains all our PD&E project files as required by law. They're tied to those various document groups and types. Within the Department of Transportation, we look at our EDMS as the FDOT's official environmental project file of record. It establishes the archive capabilities. It provides our off-site storage. It has backup and disaster recovery responsibilities. Each document is mapped to an appropriate retention schedule and disposal schedule for how long we're intended to keep these various documents. By putting the documents into these systems, we provide access to things like PSEE and other applications that are able to query the EDMS database and pull those documents out. When a document is sent for approval within the SWEPT application, it is then attributed and automatically transferred over to the EDMS and all of its associated files combined together. As you're working within the interface, if some of these documents take a long time to develop. If you want to make a particular file available in these other systems, you can also push over, say a technical study's been completed and you want to make sure it's available in other applications throughout the department. You can publish that to the EDMS, which will then also make that file available in the other applications. And the big thing that we kind of focused on with you guys is if you'll remember, we sent some consultants out to go talk to everybody to find out how you guys were storing your files, where it was stored, what your naming conventions were, how you manage them, and we found everybody was doing a very good job, but we found a common pain point from everybody was having to interact with the EDMS directly. It's an old system, it's clunky, the requirements to attribute files was labor intensive. They have had issues with our consultant community being able to put files directly into the system from outside the network. All of those things are solved with using the SWEP application. SWEP application is internet-based. You don't have to be on the DOT network. By uploading things within the SWEP application, you're also automatically behind the scenes attributing the file. We know the FM you're dealing with. We know the district you are. We know what file you're working from. Each one of those files, based on what you input, is mapped to an appropriate group and type, which means we know what file folder it needs to go into. So we don't need to request a lot of attributes from you, because just interacting with the site, we're able to capture those things. And part of that is also looking at that document naming convention, as I said, by being able to be responsive to FHWA audits, to be able to find records. We need to be able to store things in a consistent manner. All the documents, just by the process of uploading them and putting them into the system, it's applying the appropriate FM number, the appropriate class of action. If it's a type 1 document, it'll be flagged as a type 1 document. If it's an EIS, it'll be flagged as an EIS. It'll be flagged with the district, the document name, and then the date. There's some more detailed explanation there for how things will get named within the system. And then, of course, the big thing is being able to meet the retention and disposal schedules. There you see we're mapped to GS1 SL 167. That means records need to be retained for 5 fiscal years after the completion of the project reporting requirement or other applicable activity. Well, for those of you that have been in PD&E for a long time, it's very difficult to know when to even start counting those 5 fiscal years. So we've worked with Work Program. There's a concept within the Work Program system called related items. We've worked with their staff to extend the related items to be able to include NE, to be able to flag particular FM projects with NEPA related requirements, so that we can keep track of a parent FM and all associated children FMs. And the way that we're looking to begin counting on when we would actually start the 5 years is that when every parent and child related FM moves to a status 100, and a status 100 within Work Program means that the project is completely closed. Everybody's books are happy, your contractors have been paid, the department may have or has been reimbursed, the entire project is closed out. So we're looking at a process of looking at related items, a parent and a child FM. When every single one of those reaches a status 100, we begin counting 5 years. If a new child, is birthed, I guess is the word. If a new child comes out within those 5 years, we stop counting. We wait until that new FM goes to a status 100, and then we start the clock again. So we have to have a process in place to be able to know we've got the files in the right locations, we're keeping them for the right amount of time, and as well as purging them at the right amount of time as well. So with that, that's just an overview of the data retention part, and a big part of why SWEP was created, to make sure that we've got these records in the right locations for the right period of time to be able to be responsive to FHWA audits and self-assessments and our performance measures and stuff. Does anybody have any questions on that part? Because otherwise I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Chris, and we're going to jump into a quick demo on the dashboard and then a little bit longer on the type 1 categorical exclusions.
There aren't any comments on the chat. Oops, one just came in. What if the project is never constructed or one portion is never built? Would the files remain forever?
No, the files wouldn't remain forever because each of those pieces would eventually be closed. It wouldn't just remain open for forever. So as each FM number is physically closed out, we look at that FM and any associated FM. So if only a piece of the project was ever built and nothing else was ever built, when the pieces that we know about get to the point where everybody reaches status 100, then we begin to count, and that would determine when we would purge the files. Now, if another piece then pops up and it's related to the previous one, then we would stop counting and we would wait for that one to also reach a status 100. Okay, with that, Chris, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to log in now as a analyst and walk you through the dashboards. The dashboards are very similar, so we're going to do a demonstration with just one of the dashboards. I click on Project Dashboards icon, takes me to the Project Dashboards landing page, lets me choose from all the dashboards. I'm going to use the EA dashboard for federal SWAT. To switch between dashboards, it's as simple as clicking on the class of action, type 2, EIS, EA. The information that populates this is pulled from PSM. It's not live, so this line of text here explains to you that it's not live. You can click the More Info link. It tells you exactly when this morning this file was uploaded and what information is included in it. We can filter our information by district here in the Filter tab by clicking on the down arrow, and I can uncheck any district that I don't want to include or check it back just to focus on a subset of the files. I can do the same thing here in the district column. So the filter arrow is here to the right. I click on the filter arrow and I can uncheck boxes. I can also sort by any of the column headings. You see district here, and to the right of it there's this arrow pointing up. By default, all of our dashboards are sorted by district in ascending order. If I click on the word district, then they're sorted in descending order. Blanks are at the top, and then from the highest district number on down. I can also sort by fiscal year, and I also can filter. I have a filter there. The filter for item segment and for item description is a little bit different. It's the magnifying glass, so it's a search. I click on the magnifying glass and then begin typing a partial FM number, and as I go, I get a list to select from of valid FM numbers. I can select one of those items, and that becomes the sole focus of my dashboard at that point. You'll also notice on the item segment these two links, PSM and PSEE. I can click on the PSM. I need to be on the DOT intranet in order to access this information, but here's PSM data for the item segment that we're looking at. We can also look at the PSEE data. I click this link. I may be prompted for a login. I think I've already logged in and met the credentials requirement, so here's the project suite information related to that particular segment. Item description is very similar. I just want you to note that, well, let me clear this. To see all of my records again, I just click clear and then close that. I just want you to see that as I type, the more I type, the more specific I get, the more limited my options become in the selection list. So I don't have to type the full name of the project to select it. Next are PSM codes, and the PSM codes are selected based on the class of action. So here we have EA start. Obviously, if we were in type 2 or EIS, we would see a corresponding start value there. And we see dates in these columns. I want to draw your attention to this. In the EA start column for this record, we've got the date in plain text and the letter A in bold afterwards, and right next to it for the public hearing date is the dates in italics. If we scroll to the bottom, we have some notes, and note number 6 tells us project dates are shown in italicized text. Projected dates are shown in italicized text. Actual dates are shown in normal text with the letter A. So what it's telling us here is this actually took place on January 30th, 2015, and the public hearing is projected to take place on this date in the future. The other thing you'll notice is the color coding. The key for color coding is here on the bottom on the right-hand side. Green color coding means that the action's taking place on time or early. If it's behind by less than 2 weeks, then you'll see that box shaded in yellow, and shaded in red means it's behind schedule by more than 2 weeks. These are all PSM codes with the exception of the district notes column, so that's added in by the district to update the information. You'll also see, and you'll see more of these in a later view, where you see this red triangle in the upper right corner. That just is just similar to Excel, where you've got a comment there. So this is just describing what's going on with the links that are in that column. We've got a few other tabs here to look at. The next one is Highlight. Highlight by default looks back in time for 2 weeks, and it's going to highlight any of the dates for any of the PSM codes that have happened since that date. So we can click in here and change the date. We can go back as far in time as we would like, and then click on Highlight. Once we've highlighted it, we'll see that the codes within that date range, not just between now back to then, but also dates in the future. Some of the dates in the future will appear highlighted, so they'll be blue text and have kind of a halo effect around them. And there are links, so we can click on the link. I'll click on the EA Start link for this record, and we can see some detailed information related to that PSM code for that record. I'm going to uncheck the highlight, and we'll go on to Layout. The default layout that we come into is the summary layout, and it uses the default swept columns. If we want to see some more detail, we click on the Detailed link, the Detailed radio button. And you see this is showing us now columns side by side, comparing approved or projected and actual dates for various different categories. We can hover again to see the tooltips that explain how exactly the information is calculated. And there are PSM links, so we can follow the PSM links to see information specific to those PSM codes for those projects.
Hey Chris, this is Pete. I want you to go ahead and jump onto the dashboard, or not the dashboard, the Type 1 categorical exclusions, just because I'm looking at the time and I know I want to be respectful of other folks and moving on to other meetings. So generally that's the dashboard. You guys will notice that it's not populated very much right now. Over time, as folks start using those corresponding PSM codes, you'd see the information populated within these dashboards. But go ahead and go to the Type 1s and run through that, because that's part of the meat. Something else, as Chris is moving towards those things, he showed initially on the help, everything that we're showing you today is available as a very short little video to also see the navigation or how to create a Type 1 or how to look at the dashboard as well under the help menu. So I just want to make sure he gets to show you guys some of the meat, and if we finish a little bit late, I apologize. Go ahead, Chris.
Sure. So I've typed in my financial management number that's matched up to some work program data. If it didn't have a matching number, then it obviously wouldn't match up, and I would have to put in a valid number. The work program data populates most of the form here. The project description, work mix, county name, and the FAP number. I need to provide a project description, a suitable project description. I'm just going to put a little placeholder text in here for right now, but obviously the PD&E manual gives you guidelines for what you need to do. This next section duplicates the paper form that's been used in the past. So I have my CE activity type, and this is a construction of a bicycle and pedestrian path, so I'm going to select C3. And next are 12 questions, and these are the familiar 12 questions that are on the paper form for Type 1 CE. In order for my project to qualify as a Type 1 CE, all of the answers to these questions need to be no. Obviously, I would take the time, read the questions, provide supporting documentation. You see these text boxes under each question. These are places where I can provide appropriate supporting documentation, and I'm just going to put some placeholder in here. Obviously, again, you would need to meet the requirements in PD&E for providing appropriate supporting documentation. In addition, rather than typing all this stuff in, we could click on the upload document and attach a document that contains all the supporting documentation that we need, and then the description type is taken directly from the document name. We can edit that if we wanted to change it. The document date is based on the last date that that document was updated. So if that's not the publication date of the document, then we can correct it here by changing the date. And then we'll select the document type. Our choices are supporting documentation, correspondence like an email or a letter, a picture, or other. This is supporting documentation, and as supporting documentation, it will support one or more of those questions that we've just responded to. So I could say, well, it answers all of them, except I put in the answer for number 12, the supporting information, directly into the form there. And then I can save that information. So I've completed my Type 1 CE checklist, and I now can save it as a draft, come back later. I can reassign it to a colleague, or I can send it for approval. If I have any additional supporting activities I want to list, that place to list them is right here. I'm going to leave that blank. It's completely optional. So I'll send that for approval. That's going to send an email to my district environmental administrator. So let me show you what the email looks like, and I also want to log in as that district environmental administrator and walk you through the process of approving the Type 1 CE. So here's my Type 1 CE approval request for, and then the FM number and the name of the project. The following Type 1 categorical exclusions ready for your review and approval. Here's the project information, and then here's a link. I can click the link to go directly to that project. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll follow the link. When I log in, there's my alert. So that new alert is telling me that I need to review the Type 1 categorical exclusion. Also, I jumped past it, but by clicking the link, I went directly to it. So I can either, by following the link, I go directly to the form, or I can click on my alert and then click the action column for my alert to take me there and review the Type 1 CE. All the information is here, and it's completely editable, so if I need to update it, I can do that. I would review it, obviously, and then either send back, need more information, and provide comments, or approve as a Type 1 categorical exclusion. Comments are optional in that case, and then I just click submit, and it is submitted. I get a confirmation here, project approved, thank you, and then the environmental certification is here, and there's a link for whatever needs to happen in the interim, and then I can come back and click the link and go to the environmental certification. I also would receive a notification for the and an alert. You see there's a new alert here. That's for the certification. So similar activity, I would follow the link in the email or in the alert, or click here, and that would allow me to review the Type 1 CE for a certification, and the approval form just looks like that. It's just one step and then approve. So I know that was very quick, but I wanted to walk you through the process and take some questions. I'll turn it back to you, Pete.
Thank you, Chris. I do notice a couple folks that are have signed off. When I send out the email, I'll send out links to be able to access not just this recording, but also the short videos I was referencing as well. That way, anybody that felt like that was kind of at hyperspeed won't feel that way, because they'll have a different separate video also performed by Chris that goes a little slower and shows all the various components. Are there any other questions we need to answer? I know we're bumping up to time right now.
There is one question that was posted by Gwen. Are we still doing paper forms for Type 1 CE?
No, you should be shifting over to the electronic form, and part of this is a requirement we have within the MOU is we have to report on all approvals that we perform on behalf of FHWA, and by using this tool to do your Type 1 categorical exclusions, we're keeping track of all that so that we can report how many we did, what C and Ds they were mapped to, on what date, and by who, to be able to provide that information to FHWA on a quarterly basis without having to come back to each one of you every quarter to say, give us the list and all the documents for all of these qualifying Type 1s. So we're in production today. I'll send out a request to get lists from everybody to tell us who they'd like to have assign the various roles. And remember, it can be internal folks, it could be external folks. It's really just tied to who are the folks that need to have the rights to perform the activities within the application. We'll assign those rights. We'll provide them access to training. We have the help desk, and we can get folks up to speed very quickly. But yes, the intent would be to move to the electronic form. Now, over the next few days, if you've got some type 1s that you're working on or finishing, and you haven't, interacted with the system yet, you're not all the way in, then that's fine. Still use the paper, but certainly over the next few weeks, we should be transitioning to this environment. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. We're a little bit after 11. I'm sorry about that. We will send out the recording. You'll also see the email request. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And we look forward to speaking to you guys again. If you need any help, you can contact myself or the help desk, and we're happy to walk you guys through this application. Like I said, between now and December, we're going to be implementing a lot, and we're trying to do it at a short intervals with a little bit of functionality so that folks don't feel overwhelmed. With that, I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.